At some point, this is a terrible reflection on Aaron Boone and his coaching staff of like, you're just not getting the most out of the group. You allow it to go into a death swirl at about this time every year. Now, if you want to say then Aaron Boone pulls them out of it and they're fine, I assume they'll probably pull out of this and be fine. But we know this is the Frankenstein's monster inside them that will kill them again at some point along the way. John, we have somebody who's a friend of the show rejoining us this week, the president of baseball operations for the Cleveland Guardians. That's Chris Antonetti.
Yeah, I'd love to have Chris on. He's been on multiple times, and there was a lot of interesting stuff going around the Guardians, and still is. And so we're anxious to question Chris about this. They didn't end up trading Kwan. Obviously, they were never trading Ramirez, but a lot of good stuff happening with that team.
Yeah, we'll ask them all about it, but mainly John and I are going to spend a lot of time at the top of the show. We'll talk a little Mets. We want to give some love there, but we're going to really dig in on the Yankees and try to do some level of forensic thinking about how a team with this much talent could play this poorly. We'll also play hit and error at the end if you stick with us on the show with Joel, Sherman, and Jon Heyman. John, we've cleared the trade deadline. What we haven't cleared is the bad baseball out of the New York Yankees. July is come and gone, and the Yankees are still a bad baseball team. And I remember when Aaron Boone was trying to say it was 2 bad periods. It was like a 6-game losing streak, then another 6 or 7 losing streaks. This is now 7 weeks. This is a quarter of the season. In that period of time, John, they're 18-25. They've fallen out of first place. They've put themselves in some peril of not even making the playoffs. If this play continues, you just can't play like this continuously and talk about being a playoff team. And I just wonder if you could talk about this, like you're a good team when you've played like this for this long and live in the delusion where you keep making excuses for horrible, horrible baseball. What does Jon Heyman think?
Yeah, I mean, they obviously have talent. They have the best run differential, believe it or not, still in the American League. Shocking. I know, plus 92, but they are not a good baseball team. You are absolutely right. I mean, they had certain issues going into the trade deadline. They probably solved the bullpen, although we haven't seen that so far. But still, they got the fundamentals problem, and they're still an all-or-nothing team. And right now, they're an all-or-nothing team without Aaron Judge. So they're missing the all. They're just a nothing team. So it's been brutal. I mean, I can imagine them not making the playoffs. I could also imagine them getting to the World Series again because there really isn't a good team in the American. I don't want to say good. There isn't a great team in the American League. So, I mean, they still got a shot. They still have talent, but so many flaws.
John, I spent a lot of last year, especially on our Yankee webcast, talking about how horrible they are at baseball. And they kept doing the nothing to see here, nothing to see here, and it only cost them a World Series. And then they wanted to alibi the World Series as 1 inning, 1 game. Then they complained, well, Joe Kelly and Miguel Rojas, like they were. At what point do you say it isn't 1 game? It isn't 1 series. It's not superficial players on the Dodgers. It's not a week. This was like they are in for multiple years now. For at least the last 3 seasons, they have a period in the second half where they have runs like this, where they play well under 500 for sustained periods of time. John, you mentioned the run differential. This is the run differential of a team that should be comfortably in first place in this division. At some point, this is a terrible reflection on Aaron Boone and his coaching staff of like, you're just not getting the most out of the group. You allow it to go into a death swirl at about this time every year. Now, if you want to say then Aaron Boone pulls them out of it and they're fine, I assume they'll probably pull out of this and be fine. But we know this is the Frankenstein's monster inside them that will kill them again at some point along the way.
Yeah, I mean, accountability is a problem. Jeter and A-Rod mentioned this on TV. We've all seen it. We've all said it as well. The illustration of that was Jazz Chisholm, after making that ridiculous base running blunder the other day and getting caught off of first base. I was asked if he would do it all over again, and he said yes. I mean, Aaron Boone has made clear that that was not the right way to do it. That was a mistake. There was no reason to be doubled off on a pop-up to second base when you're not trying to steal second. You're just standing there. It made no sense whatsoever, and this message obviously didn't get through to him at all. If there was accountability, he would have said, I blew it. I made a mistake. I let the team down." And there obviously is not. Aaron Boone is great at getting along with everybody. He's great at making everything sound positive. But at some point, you've got to suggest to the players that they've got to do something better or different. I mean, the days of Jim Leland are over. Billy Martin certainly way over, but there's got to be some level of accountability.
Yeah, I think they have a House Steinbrenner, Brian Cashman, Aaron Boone coaching staff. Like, this is everybody's fault because this isn't a one-day issue. This is you've decided to cast your lot in a certain way. John, that certain way is, to your point, they're a one-talent team. They hit the ball over the fence, and when they don't, they look like a different team. And I just don't know why you can't have it all when you're the Yankees, why it feels like homers versus everything else. And John, I wonder what you think about this. It's a thought I've had in my head watching them obviously play poorly these last few years when it comes to technical baseball. I think what's missed by dispassionate people who only see pieces of graph paper and computer printout is that if you could do anything, what you'd want to do is hit a home run, right? It's a sure run. It could be two, it could be three, four, but the only thing you can do on a baseball field that's a sure run is hit it over the fence. I get it why it's so valuable. But when you don't see what the energy, momentum, what it does to your dugout, what it does to their dugout, what it does to a visiting crowd, what it does to a home crowd, when you hustle a double, when you hustle a triple, when you execute well on the field, when you execute a bunt, like there's certain, and by the way, when you're concentrating on stuff like that, it makes you sharper all the time to be able to win a game when the ball doesn't go over the fence, which sometimes it doesn't, often in the postseason. And I think that they have not seen that there are ties to what they emphasize. I'm not saying give up analytics. I'm not saying give up homers. They're incredibly valuable. But the indifference to the other stuff, which all feels like box checking and bullshit when they say things like, oh, we work on that, or we're as good as that as anyone in the league. We all have eyes. You're not as good at that as everyone in the league.
Yeah, I mean, they were quick to adapt to the analytics and the home runs and the on base percentage, and that paid off. But now there seems to be a cycle, and the teams that are putting the ball in play, like Toronto and Milwaukee, and teams that don't strike out are uh, actually performing better. It's not all about the home run, and there's more to the game than hitting the ball over the fence. And too many strikeouts. I mean, to me, it's shocking that their fundamentals are still bad when they've imported Goldschmidt, Bellinger, and McMahon, three very good defensive players. Overall, it still seeps in there somehow. Uh, it's really shocking what's going on with this team, and to be swept in against Miami. I mean, that's really another illustration of what's gone on here. Now, give Miami credit. They were 16 under. Now they are 500. So they're obviously playing better, but they're a team that's got speed, that puts the ball in play, that's got youthful energy. Yankees don't have any of those things right now.
Yeah, it seems to me, John, that oftentimes it feels like they start with the answer they want and work backward from that. We're a good defensive team. Here's three things that prove that. We're a good base running team. Here's three things that prove. Well, I could find anything to prove it. Like you can't be. And by the way, the Yankees aren't alone. I watched the Giants kick the crap out of the Mets yesterday at Citi Field. The Giants did some stuff on the field that would make you like pull your eyes out, and they won the game easily. Like I'm not saying the Yankees are the only bad fundamental team in the sport, but they're the Yankees. You've got a $300 million payroll. You have incredible support staff involved as far as volume. How can this continue to be the way you do things without sitting and saying it literally it you had a chance to win a World Series if you were buttoned up last year. You had a chance if you were buttoned up. John, you were the one. I remember, I think you said to me, if they had won that game 5, where they're up, what was it, 5-0, the Dodgers were essentially out of pitching. Like they were going to have a puncher's chance to come all the way back in that series. They just had to play a clean game. And they didn't play anything close to a clean game. And it cost them a championship. They should have won game 1 if they played a clean game. They didn't. And like, if that was me, I would stare into my soul into the distance. Like, You got to get better at this. And to your point, they've actually added players who are better at this. But if it's not what you're about, if it's not what you're emphasizing, if it's not what you care about every second, you will not be good at it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really been shocking. Now, the first 2, 3 months this season, they weren't as bad as they've been lately. But this is a very streaky team. I know Boone said we've only had the 2 streaks. Well, now we're on a third streak of bad, right? So we've had a lot of these bad streaks. I mean, this is right now does not look like a very good baseball team, despite that run differential. And as I said, they still have an opportunity. They're still in playoff position. I would still wouldn't be shocked if they come out of the American League. I'm going to be a little shocked if they beat the National League team. The National League seems better, still a little bit better anyway. There aren't truly great teams. There's one team over 600. That's the Milwaukee Brewers, the team that came in to New York to start the season and got clobbered. And we were all talking about the torpedo bats at the time. It looked like a big deal. I think Milwaukee is the best example of a team that does everything right and, doesn't have home run hitters, but has speed, puts the ball in play, great fundamentals. I mean, they need to look at that team and see how they do it because they're doing it on not only a low payroll, but they're doing it without big sluggers on the roster.
John, I'll just to wrap it up on the Yankees, I'd add one more thing. I'm curious what you think about it. Is you mentioned the Brewers. Um, and by the way, I actually agree with you. You could convince me the Yankees missed the playoffs. You could convince me they win the AL championship. And I think we're in the same dynamic as last year, where the 5 best teams in the sport are all in the National League. And the Yankees might, if they get the right draw, if they get in and get the right draw, they might get through again. The Yankees had the right draw last year. 2 AL Central teams who all but bowed down to them in the playoffs. And they got through, and it didn't matter how many mistakes they made on the field. AL Central teams were going to bow down to them and lose, and they were going to get to the playoffs. And a National League team, I think, was probably going to beat them. And I think a National League team is superior this year. The one thing about the Brewers, it's one of the reasons about a month ago, I said to somebody, an executive from another team, he asked me, he said, "What do you think of the NL Central?" I said, "I think the Brewers are going to go flying by the Cubs." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "They have pitching depth when everybody else is running out of pitching. Like enough that they've actually traded Aaron Savali and Nestor Cortez along the way because they actually have pitching depth." The one thing I look at with the Yankees is if they miss the playoffs, will fundamentals have been a part of it? Yes. But I actually think they might run out of starting pitching. I mean, yesterday was a big day, and Luis Heel did not rise to that big day. They need him to be really good. Once they get rid of Stroman, which, by the way, I think was the right move, you are now in the Cam Schlittler, Will Warren business till the finish line unless Ryan Yarbrough gets healthy. And it means these 5 guys have to pretty much stay healthy and somewhat effective to the end, even if the bullpen additions don't look like Friday night. And I think they might run out of starting pitching, and I don't know how they survive if they do.
Yeah, I don't think they came particularly close to getting a starter either. I
I
know
think that
that
was a mistake.
yeah, I don't know. Could they have done something though? I mean,
Charlie Morton should have been done.
really more. Yeah, I mean, Alcantara. I mean, they were going to want a lot for Alcantara, and suddenly you saw Cabrera, right? He's got 3 years to go. They should want a lot for Cabrera and probably for Alcantara in the situation that they're in the seller's market with years to go. And I don't think they came that close on Kelly. I think they looked into Kelly and Gallen. Yeah, I mean, Charlie Morton had a nice game last night. Certainly hard. Is it possible the Yankees just didn't? They didn't believe in this team and they didn't want to go crazy. They did pick up relievers, obviously, and they did improve. And I did have them as one of my winners. And Bednar and Doval are back end relievers, which they absolutely needed. And their bullpen over the last previous 6 weeks was one of the worst 5 in baseball. I mean, a lot of it is running out of gas. The Mets bullpen ran out of gas too, with the starters being 5 inning starters for the most part, other than Fried and a couple others. But yeah, I don't know. There were starters that weren't traded that they could have gotten. Uh, you know, they probably did play. Maybe they played it too conservative. Unless we know exactly what the offers were, we don't know this, but maybe they did it conservatively, and maybe they weren't really sure about this team. They didn't. I get not giving up Lombard or Spencer Jones, though.
Get it. But
I know what I get. I mean, Alcantara's ERA is worse than Stroman's, right? And I mean, I believe in him. I think he's going to be good eventually, but He's got a 6.36 ERA. So I get that one. But yeah, I mean, that's another issue that you can look at and say you got to wonder about this team.
Yeah, I
I'm not going to be shocked. I mean, do you agree? I'm not going to be shocked at all if they miss the playoffs at this point.
Yeah, I think they should have won for either Merrill Kelly or Charlie Morton. That wouldn't have been mortgaging the farm system. We saw what was given up for those two guys by Detroit and Texas. That isn't a mortgage of the farm system. They needed to make Schlittler or Warren the number 6 starter sitting at AAA so they have some depth. Right now, like if they have another injury, we've seen Alan Winans. He's not a major league pitcher, and there's really nobody else down there who they could call up. If they have any glitch here physically, or Hill isn't good, I don't think they survive it. Let's just jump quickly here. The other New York team, I think, is look, I think we know who the 6 playoff teams in the National League are going to be already, unless the Marlins are not going to lose another game this year, or the Reds have a surge that I don't see coming from a flawed team. I think the 6 teams are in position. So the question, I think, for the Mets, unless there's a 2007, 2008 collapse, is are they winning the division or are they finishing second? The being at the stadium again yesterday, John, I do think they did not want to add a starter who had lesser stuff. I think they looked into Merrill Kelly from what I could tell, and they're like, his stuff isn't as good as guys we have, maybe even in 6, 7, and 8 potential starters here if we got guys healthy. But these guys have not performed, and to me, Frankie Montas is always a great theory. Like, we're up to the Yankees, the Reds, the Brewers, and the Mets buying into a theory, and the guy doesn't pitch well when he actually plays, but I get to hear about how great his stuff plus is. Um, I think that's the issue for them. I think they have built a really terrific bullpen, but it's a 1 inning at a time for about 7 of the guys in the bullpen. And so they need the starters to give them something. And that includes Senga and Manaea, who have not been great. It includes Holmes, who seems to be hitting a wall as a starter, which should be understandable. They need this to be better.
Yeah, absolutely. Peterson's been great, but right. The rest of that rotation, you wonder about. David Stearns has done a great job. His signings have been outstanding generally. I never understood the Frankie Montas one to give him a 2-year deal for $34 million. I think, does he even have an opt out? I mean, he's not opting out, but it doesn't matter now. But I mean, I don't know how he gets these contracts. The guy is obviously a brilliant negotiator. What did he get? $15 million from Cincinnati. Then they were able to trade him to Milwaukee. I mean, he was good in Oakland. Then he came to the Yankees. He was injured when he was with the Yankees. Didn't do anything. You're right. I mean, I read your column. It's all about the stuff with him, and it's all about what you envision or hope for. And he has not done it. It's been going on several years at this point. So I'm concerned about him. You're right on Senga and Manaea. I think for them to be a World Series team, they need to see those guys be at least number 2 type starters. I do like their bullpen. I don't mind that they're 1 inning guys. If you got 7 good ones, that's pretty good. And there are many teams that could put DFA Rigo Garcia, right? I mean, the guy was fantastic. I don't know why did they do that? You broke that story. What is the reason that they DFA'd him? Couldn't they do something else?
Yeah, well, he had pitched 3 out of 4, and they did not have somebody who could give them length if what happened with Montas. And by the way, Austin Warren saved their butt. He threw like 55 pitches for 4 innings. My suspicion is, I mean, we're doing this early in the morning on Monday. We'll hear he was sent to the minor leagues and somebody else will be. I think that last spot in the bullpen is just going to be a revolving door, especially until Blackburn he comes back and gives them a long reliever. But even that's dangerous because once Blackburn gives you 3 or 4, he's down for 4 days. So they need some length out of these guys in the rotation.
Yeah, I mean, this is a smaller issue for another day, but the union probably needs to step in here. I mean, I don't blame the Mets; they're playing within the rules, but to DFA a guy because they've used him a lot doesn't seem appropriate to me. I don't know what the union needs to do about this, but they need to figure out a rule. Remember, Tonkin last year was he was DFA'd by both of our teams multiple times. It seemed like anyway, and doesn't seem right. I mean, I do feel better about the Mets overall. Obviously, Soto's not hitting great right now. Lindor wasn't hitting great for a while. Pete wasn't hitting great for a while. I still like their lineup. I don't think it's the best lineup in baseball, as somebody claimed in spring training, but it should be better than it's been. I do think that has been an issue. Yankees lineup has been a top 5 lineup easily, despite its flaws, its all or nothing character. I do think the Mets lineup is better than it's shown and will be better. And I do feel better about the Mets. Certainly, it does feel like those are the 16s, and it's going to be interesting. It's going to go back and forth. I went back and forth between picking the Phillies and the Mets as I was doing my picks at the beginning of the year. I ended up picking the Mets, but I basically I think I flipped a coin. I don't know. How did you do it?
I think I picked the Braves.
Oh, well, it happens. I've had some bad
I'm not positive, but I put so little thought and effort into it. I think prediction.
so you're not a big prediction guy.
It's stupid.
And yeah, the Braves, I had them third, but there was so many injuries and Profar, and it's just been a disaster. It's one of those years. The Braves and the Diamondbacks. Say they're the two unluckiest, but I mean, you bring in Profar and he has a lack of character. That's not really luck.
Yeah. Well, one of the teams that kind of like danced on and off maybe at the trade deadline were the Cleveland Guardians. They did a little stuff, traded two guys who are on the injured list. We'll probably end up asking about that. Their president of baseball operations, Chris Antonetti, joins us next. John and I are so pleased. Somebody who's joined the show previously, a friend of the show, a friend of us over the years, help us do our job. So available and interesting and insightful is Chris Antonetti, the president of baseball operations for the Cleveland Guardians. Chris, thank you so much for joining the show.
My pleasure, Joel. I'm not sure I'm any of those things, but it's great to be with you anyway.
Yes, just go with it, Chris.
Okay, I'll go with it.
It makes the flow of the show so much better.
Okay.
This is show business.
Chris, I found your deadline fascinating. You were asked for one of the better players in the sport, seemed to be out there in Steven Kwan, and you ended up trading two guys who were on the injured list. It kind of felt like a little of everything, and you're kind of in the race still for maybe at least the wild card. Take us through your thinking. You're a veteran at this, as much veteran as anybody. How you approach this and why you approached it the way you did.
Yeah, Joel, there are a lot of factors at play as we approach the deadline. I think first and most importantly, we have to have a realistic assessment of our current situation and think about how that informs our decisions. Our goal is to try to find a way to win a World Series. And within that goal, we sometimes need to be more focused on the short term. Sometimes we need to be more focused on the long term. And in some cases, it's a little bit of both. And I think this deadline was maybe a little bit about both. We recognize the competitive position we still have with the roster that we have, and especially the way we've played since the early July, and wanted to continue to give this team a chance to make the postseason. But at the same time, we had opportunities to really improve our position moving forward in the trade for Shane Bieber, and so we were able to do a little bit of both around this deadline.
I think the most interesting and maybe the best position player whose name was discussed a lot was Steven Kwan. So I want to ask you, obviously, we'd heard that the Dodgers and the Padres showed interest, and I'm sure many, many, many teams showed interest. How close did that come, and how did you handle that with Steven? Because, it isn't often that a player of that caliber, even though he's got a couple years to go before free agency, is talked about a lot during the deadline.
Yeah, I mean, the best we try to do, John, is to communicate as best we can with players of that situation. So I had an opportunity to connect not just with Steven, but a handful of other players on the roster in the days leading up to the trade deadline and just share a little bit about what was happening and what the dialogue was like and different paths and different ways things could go, because it's very, very hard to predict. And I called Steven, I'm not sure exactly how long before the deadline, but when it became apparent we weren't going to trade him, and I shared with him, I said, the thing I can confirm for you, Steven, is not only do we have a great appreciation for who you are as a baseball player and a teammate and as a professional, but so does the rest of Major League Baseball. And we're excited that he'll continue to lead us moving forward.
Just to follow up on Kwan, it felt like, as I mentioned before, the Dodgers and Padres were two of the teams in it. How close did it come for you to actually trading Steven Kwan? And I don't know, maybe I'm just guessing here, but it seemed like Leo DeVries would probably have to be in it if it was the Padres. And once he was traded to I was going to call him Oakland, to Sacramento, was that a factor in him ending up staying as a Cleveland Guardian?
John, I think you know me well enough by now that I'm probably not going to dive into all those details, but There's lots of different considerations that go into the trades, and whether or not something is close or far away, that's really hard to say. But I can again tell you there was a ton of interest from a lot of teams in Steven, and I think that reflects just how good a player he is. And we're excited that he'll continue to be with us moving forward.
Chris, if I could just go back, it's not unprecedented to trade for a player who's injured. I think Alex Cobb was on the
Yep.
list when you did it last year. But Bieber's a pretty accomplished pitcher. He's a homegrown guy. It's a guy you had invested time in to get to this point. Can you take us through the mechanism of making people comfortable that a player who's on the injured list is a tradable player, and yourself comfortable that a guy who's probably one of the better pitchers in the history of your franchise should be given up before he does something for you in 2025?
Yeah, lots to unpack there, Joel. So I'll do my best. If I miss something, let me know.
I'm sorry, I always try to avoid multi-pronged questions.
No, that's okay. I'll do. So first off, I think Shane progressed really well through the rehab process and his return from Tommy John surgery, and he had gotten to the point where his most recent start, I think he threw 4 innings, around 65 pitches in a rehab assignment a few days before the deadline in Akron. And then, at that point, we felt really good about where he was, but ultimately it's up to each team to make their own determination. So we really don't try to convince other teams of anything. We are just transparent, give them all of the information that we have, and they can make an informed decision. If they're comfortable with the medicals, great, they can move forward. If they're not, maybe another team would be. But I think in Shane's case, everyone felt really good about the progress he was making. I think what we were able to see when he was out there pitching is his stuff quality didn't only get back to where it was in maybe 2023, but returned to when Shane was at or near his peak. And so I think the Blue Jays are getting a very, very good pitcher in Shane Bieber who's going to help them. But for us, we felt we had an opportunity to get a player back in return in Cal Steven that can help us as early as next year and for years to come as part of our rotation. And we appreciate that there's risk with prospects, there's risk with health and injuries and performance, but this is a guy that we've targeted actually from his days at Mississippi State when he was in college. We tried to select him in the draft, but ultimately Toronto beat us to it. He came up in trade discussions as recently as this offseason, so it's a player that we know pretty well and are really excited to add to the organization.
Look, I know you can't dive into the actual cases of Luis Ortiz and Emmanuel Clase, who are, currently not on your roster as MLB probes into some gambling issues with them. I wonder if I could ask, though. I am going to ask 2 questions. You could do this. Is number one, how much did it impact your decisions at the deadline? You lost a starting pitcher and a closer, potentially for the season and maybe longer than that. How did it affect it? You know what? Let me stick with it. How did it affect your thing? I can always come back to the other one.
I think, as I said earlier, Joel, there's lots of different considerations and factors and variables we consider as we approach the deadline. But the reality for us is both players are on the non-disciplinary paid leave list at least through August 31st, and that means they're not going to be available to pitch for us. So I think I'd be remiss to say that doesn't affect how we think about our competitiveness in the second half. Now, we think we have players that are capable of stepping up and filling those voids, and some have done so admirably, especially in the rotation. But Emmanuel Clase was on a path to be a Hall of Fame, closer with where he was right now. So that's a very difficult guy to replace in the near term.
Chris, my other question, and look, this is a tough question, and it's, I think, something not just baseball is dealing with, but every sport, college, pro, wherever there's lines and gambling on things, which is, I'm just not going to believe that the problem might be centralized on 2 pitchers with the Cleveland Guardians. Being in the center of the storm of this, do you worry about this for sports in general, but our industry, that like this kind of gambling stuff is going to infect it and make us worry about the integrity, our guys not throwing pitches over the plate to win singular bets? I just wonder, as somebody in the center of the storm now, what you think of this.
I think you're highlighting some really good points, Joel. And I think the dialogue, we have a responsibility to have a dialogue and continue to think about that. And how do we as a league and, as an industry continue to make sure that we preserve the integrity of, our respective sports? The thing I am confident about, and I do appreciate, is I know, again, I can't go into the details, but I know how seriously Major League Baseball takes these issues, and there are certainly mechanisms in place to try to make sure that they're doing everything possible to preserve the integrity of that and make sure things like this don't happen. And To the extent they do, they're handled appropriately. But I think the dialogue is an important one to have because it's a very complex issue that can put individuals, teams, and sports in really precarious positions.
Not to talk about the two fellows involved in this gambling investigation that MLB is doing, but I mean, are you as shocked? Generally, would you be shocked that anybody who's now just a major leaguer, but as you say, anybody who's having a great career would take this kind of a risk? It seems crazy to me that anybody would even consider something like this.
Yeah, John, I again don't want to speak specifically about any particular situation, but I think if you look back over history, there's always been concerning behavior around sports betting and sports gambling, and different people have made choices along the way that might not make sense to many of us. So, again, it's really hard to predict and understand the individual circumstances of what's happening with any individual and what might lead them to make the decisions that they do.
Chris, there's no easy segue away from something this serious, so forgive a brutal one.
No worries.
Which is, yeah, I'm sure we don't want to. You at least you don't want to stay on this subject, so I'll get us off of it. Uh, Look, there's no stealth great player in the sport who's heading to Cooperstown like Jose Ramirez. It's 7 top 10 MVP finishes, 6 in the top 6. I assume there's another one coming. I don't know that there's a question, except for if I kind of said Jose Ramirez question mark. What's it like to watch him every day?
It is such an honor and a privilege to be able to watch Hosey play every day. Not only is he exceptionally good at every aspect of the game in the batter's box, on the bases, defensively, but he leads our team in obvious and maybe less visible ways by the way he goes about things. And it was funny. I've talked about Jose so much that when I gathered with our media a couple of weeks ago, I asked them to try to describe Hosey because I'm running out of words for just how spectacular he is and what he means to us. And I think he is getting starting to get the appropriate recognition that he deserves. And I know there's some sensitivity around calling him underrated, but I can tell you, we as an organization and me as a leader could not appreciate what he does any more than we do because he is an extraordinary teammate and an extraordinary contributor.
You were on the fringe of the race going into the deadline, and as you said, you look at the near term and long term prospects of the team. You're still on the fringe of the race. You outperform what my expectations and many do a great job that you guys do in there, you and Cherney and the rest of them. What do you think right now? Do you have a shot at this? Detroit has obviously not been as great in the last month as they were earlier. Do you have a shot at the division? Do you feel like you have a chance at the playoffs if you don't win that division?
I give our team and our coaching staff and voter a lot of credit. We had a 10-game losing streak just a few short weeks ago, and it would have been easy for us to kind of go the other way at that point. And we had just finished losing 10 games, and we're about to go into Houston to play a series there where we typically have not played very well. And we came out of that series, won all 3 of those games, and found a way to right the ship and get back to, an over 500. So again, a ton of credit to our team and the coaching staff and players for getting us back into the race and giving us a chance to make things interesting here over the next few months. So I've learned a long time ago, John, at this point of the year, now there's no benefit in trying to predict what's going to happen, but immerse ourselves in each day, try to win as many games as we can, and look up at the end of the year and see if that's good enough.
You drafted and developed Francisco Lindor, and you tried to sign him. I didn't quite get it done. Not going to be easy. Obviously, in a relatively small market. As now he's been a Met for almost as long as he's been a Guardian, or about as long. What have you thought? What have you observed? Is he about what you expect? He finally made the All-Star team, but he's actually played well for the Mets, I think, overall.
Very, very much. I think we were expecting and have always felt that Francisco has a chance to be a special player. And we certainly saw that in his time with us in Cleveland. And I know that there were some maybe bumps along the road to getting that consistency in New York, but I think he's found his way. And I was so happy for him this year that he was able to make that first All-Star game as a Met. And he's so well deserving. And I think he is on that path to possibly find himself in Cooperstown one day.
Chris, I wonder as a way to wrap this up, your time in baseball even predates Cleveland, but you've been there since '99. You've graduated to GM, president of baseball operations. So you've been through the cycle of the trade deadline a lot over the years. Can you give us some clue with more teams, expanded playoffs, more thought about analytics, better understanding of minor league value? What's changed in your chair, especially over those, say, last 72, 96 hours as you're making a decision?
Yeah, I think a lot of the things you highlighted, Joel, certainly the additional wild card has changed the dynamics around supply and demand around the deadline over the course of the last few years. And we've seen that impact how things get done. And I think the other point that you highlighted is there's probably a greater convergence on values on how teams look at players than maybe there was 15 years ago, where there were more opportunities to maybe look at players a little bit differently, which sometimes can actually be helpful in working towards trades. And I think that over time, the player valuations have converged more than they were maybe 15 or 20 years ago. So obviously trades still happen. What were there, 36 or so that happened around this deadline? And but there are times when it feels like it could be more and more difficult to make them get them to completion.
Yeah, and I mean, I wasn't going to follow, but you kind of like left something on the tee for me. I mean, I just wonder if Moneyball was always looking for the inefficiency, isn't the inefficiency now the willingness to trade prospects? Like, does everybody clutch these like pearls too much because you all have similar valuations and you're so worried about the next whatever? And I would say this is the Mets shouldn't have traded Pete Crow Armstrong, but you know what? They went to the NLCS last year without him and they might win the World Series. Good organizations could even overcome terrible trades. And I think that maybe these prospects are clutched too much. What is, especially in your marketplace, probably has to clutch them for the financial control of it. I wonder what you think.
Yeah, I think I don't want to lose sight, Joel. At least the way I look at it is the goal is not to win the top prospect award. The goal is to win a World Series. And so in order to do that, our view is we want to try to get to the playoffs as consistently as we can. And that's what we're striving for. And I think you've seen us operate on both ends of that spectrum. You've seen us trade away prospects, but then you've seen us like last year or other years in which, we felt our competitive position justified it, that we traded future wins for now wins to try to win a World Series in this particular year. And that calculus can be very hard, but I know at least sitting in the seat that we're sitting in, all of the decisions we make are trying to find that way to win a World Series. And sometimes that means making really painful trades and trading prospects.
Well, Chris, I know you went through this difficult cycle again. You did some stuff, but your team's still in it. Game over 500. The wild card is within sight. If one of our teams in New York doesn't win another game this year, which looks like it might happen, they'll have a shot. I know that was said sarcastically, Chris. I saw your face.
I'm thinking even of my good friend Brian Cashman, who I know what he's going through at the moment, and I'm quite confident they'll win a lot more games for the balance of the year.
Well, you go to lunch with them. So you are talking to us from New York. Cleveland plays the Mets over the next 3 days. I know we know you're busy. John and I do appreciate you joining us on the show.
It's always good to be with you guys.
John and I, of course, thank Chris Antonetti for joining the show. John, hit or error?
I'm going to give a hit to the Philadelphia Phillies and Dave Dombrowski, a friend of the show. I did another great job at the deadline. Teams frequently have the same issue. They're always got a great lineup and a great rotation, and they needed bullpen help, and he got Joan Duran, who I think was the best reliever out there. There were a lot of closers out there, right? And many of them also ran teams, and you wonder, are they going to be able to close in a big market or whatever? I think Duran is the best guy that was traded. I know that the most was given up for Miller, who has 4 years to go, and he's got the bigger arm even than Duran. But to me, Duran was the best guy to get. Helsley was a good get. Bednar was a good get. Certainly Doval as well. The local teams did well, but I think Dave Dombrowski may end up being the big winner in this deadline.
Amen, John. I actually think Duran is great. I think he's physically, he looks like a middle linebacker who pitches. He's like 6'5", 230. Looks like Brian Urlacher's pitching out there. I think he gives off that besides having great stuff. I think excellent call. So I'm going to stay in that lane, John, because I think you and I, we do a lot of work at this time of year, and all we hear is people whine about the cost and nobody wants to trade prospects. Well, Dave Dombrowski trades prospects, and AJ Preller, nobody trades prospects like AJ Preller. And I'm going to give credit here. And I know the counter to the AJ Preller argument, which is there is a point of collapse coming between the lack of farm system left and the long contracts where guys get older and worse. The Machados, the Bogarts, the Tatis, Joe Musgrove, Darvish, I get it. But the San Diego Padres spent most of 6 decades completely irrelevant. They've never won a World Series, right? This is the best period in their history on the field. The Chargers left town. They sell out the place every night. They're going to draw over 3 million people again. They've done that. They've been at 2-9 or 3 for this will be 4 straight years. They're making generations of fans by doing this. We are allowing guys in 3/4 zips who look at graph paper to tell us about future value and forget that we play for a championship every year. And that has incredible value too. And the Padres have relevantly gone after championships the last few years. Nobody played the Dodgers better than them last year. And it was because of what AJ did at the deadline by getting Tanner Scott, who was the Ohtani slayer, that they almost won that series. Can we put value in today and appreciate? By the way, if it all collapses and the Padres in 2 years are terrible, and let's see that. He keeps finding players in his system to keep making it relevant. I don't think Jackson Merrill's going anywhere soon. I don't think Tatis going anywhere. Miller should be good, whatever. But if they collapse, you know what they'll be? The same level of irrelevant they were for most of 6 years, but with the last 5, 6 years behind them. Good for them for trying. When I listen to too many people, the inefficiency in the game is people holding on to prospects at a ridiculous level.
Yeah, you remember when they couldn't afford to keep Chase Headley and had to trade him to the Yankees? And
Yeah.
I don't know, their biggest contract was like $50 million. Now they've signed Manny Machado to two $300 million plus contracts. He's great at dealing with his ownership and getting the most from them, and he's great at procuring talent. They are always able to replenish that farm system, and he trades. He's got guts. I mean, there's no question about it. He certainly traded a lot of pieces that are pretty good right now. In fact, he tried to go back and get Mackenzie Gore. Obviously, Wood, now he's in a slump, is was an all-star, is outstanding hitter, although he's not playing great at the moment. C.J. Abrams, he gave up. I mean, going back a while, he gave up Trey Turner, and he gave up Max Fried. He's willing to trade all these prospects. I mean, the Trey Turner one, to me, is fascinating. He traded him away, and then he tried to sign him back for $341 million. So, I mean, the guy's got big guts, and he's great at procuring talent. We'll see about this Mason Miller trade. I don't know. To me, to give up the number 3 prospect in baseball, I know they were a little down, believe it or not, on Leo DeVries, the number 3 prospect in baseball. I think he's got a little of a shoulder thing, and he has it for power. He's 18 years old. He is the number 3 prospect, and they give up many more prospects in that deal, and they got basically Miller, and they got Sears, J.P. Sears, who gives them another back end help in the rotation, but. That's quite a gamble for a relief pitcher. They may believe that they're going to turn Mason Miller into a starter, but I don't know. Do they need a 4th all-star reliever? We shall see. It is very exciting in San Diego. It's not the small market everybody makes it out to be. It's certainly a mid-market, but to sell out almost every game, I will give them credit. So I'm generally applauding you, but agreeing with you, but I don't know. To me, that's a gamble. If you're going to trade Leo DeVries, I'd get something other than a reliever for your 4th great reliever for him. Who had a 3 ERA this year. He's not even dominating.
Yeah.
Duran was gotten for less, right?
Yeah, when I watch Miller pitch, I actually don't know how anyone ever hits the ball, but yeah.
That's new. Safety and neither class now, right? But he never, he's often injured. That's the question with him. But right, he got great stuff. But he's a reliever,
I do know this, John, is when he traded for Soto, I heard, he emptied his farm system. He won't be able to make a big trade again for a long time. Okay, like I think that guy will keep finding ways, and everyone else in the sport will be annoyed and telling me. People who don't have relevant teams will tell me how stupid what he did is, except for he's had a relevant team now for 5 years, and one that might win the championship this year. Because as you pointed out, it's a sport without a great team, and the one thing Miller gives them is I wouldn't want to be behind the Padres after the 4th or 5th inning in a playoff game. Because
Their bullpen was already the best. They had the best ERA. Even in the middle, like 2 months ago, they had like the 9th best bullpen ERA, and everybody said they have the best bullpen, and they were right. And they ended up with 3 all-star relievers. Now they got one that's more talented than any of them. It's quite a bullpen, I will say. But they're good, and they lengthened their lineup too, right? I mean, that was an issue with that team. Their lineup was not necessarily that.
Hart and Laureano give them something. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, they're certainly one of the favorites this year. So he plays to win for the year. And last year, I mean, I was out there awaiting the Mets and saw the final couple games, and I think everybody figured the Padres were going to win that series when they had Cease against the bullpen game in Game 4. Just didn't get it done.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're not adding to our bullpen of producers. We're sticking with Tommy Hogan. He's good enough all by himself. He can pitch all the innings. Tommy, thank you as always for helping us navigate this show. Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, please give us a listen, rate, and review us. That does help the show. The New York Post Sports YouTube page, give us a view. And we're in the stretch run now. 2 months left in the regular season. Please stick with us on the show with Joel, Sherman, and Jon Heyman.